Welcome back to the Deep Dive. If you're really trying to find that key thing to make your English sound more natural, well, you're definitely in the right place today.
Absolutely.
We are about to dive deep into something that's, it's absolutely everywhere in conversations. You hear it in movies, songs.
Yeah.
But honestly, it can be incredibly tricky.
It really can. It's one of those areas where learners often get a bit stuck, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Before we jump right in, though, if you find these deep dives useful, please do think about hitting that subscribe button. It genuinely helps us keep making more of these explorations for you.
It does. And this topic, it's a big one. It behaves a little differently than you might expect grammatically, but getting it down, so rewarding.
Totally agree. So today's deep dive is all about phrasal verbs.
Huh?
We've got our source text here. It's called Mastering Phrasal Verbs, Speak Like a Native Speaker.
Right.
And our mission, as always, is to pull out those key insights. We want to figure out, okay, what exactly are phrasal verbs? Why are they so important for sounding, fluent? And then we'll break down some of the most common, most useful examples that the source highlights for us.
Yeah, and they really are like the secret handshake of natural English sometimes. Conversations can feel a bit textbook-ish without them.
Stiff, yeah. Okay, so let's unpack this then. The source gives us a pretty clear definition to start with. What are we actually talking about when we say phrasal verb?
Okay, so basically the source defines them as combinations. It's a verb plus one particle or sometimes even two.
Okay.
And these particles, they're usually prepositions or adverbs, words like up, down, in, out, on, off.
Right, so like you pair a verb, say give, with a particle like up. Mm-hmm. Seems simple enough, right? Give up.
Well, that's where the catch is, you see. And the source points this out straight away. The really interesting part, the crucial part, is that these combinations create a new meaning. And that meaning is often totally different, sometimes like dramatically different from the original verb on its own or the particle on its own.
Okay, so the sum isn't just the sum of its parts.
Not at all. That's the key.
Right, that's the aha moment then. Like your example, give up, means to quit, to stop trying. It's got nothing to do with physically, handing something upwards.
Exactly. And this non-literal nature, that's why they can be such a challenge. You often can't just guess the meaning logically from the individual words. Mm-hmm. But, and the source really hammers this home, this is precisely why they matter so much.
Okay, so why is that? If they're confusing, why are they so fundamental to sounding natural?
Because, despite the potential confusion, phrasal verbs are just everywhere, especially in everyday spoken English, informal English.
Right.
They're what native speakers tend to use naturally all the time in conversations, casual emails, texts, and definitely in media like movies, TV shows, podcasts. You hear them constantly.
So you can't really avoid them if you want to understand real English.
Pretty much, yeah. The source basically says, if you want to understand people authentically and you want to be understood yourself in a natural way, you have to get comfortable with phrasal verbs.
So they're not just some obscure grammar point. They are the living language.
Exactly.
And understanding them helps your listening, obviously.
Yeah.
But using them makes your own speaking sound less formal, more fluent.
Precisely. Both sides of the coin. The source highlights this big benefit. A real boost in your overall communication skills, speaking, writing, but especially, listening comprehension.
Okay.
And the best approach, according to this source, is not to try and learn all of them at once, but to focus on the really common, really useful ones first.
That makes sense. Which brings us nicely to the next part. The source makes a really important point before we look at specific verbs, something we sort of touched on. Context is king. Why is that so vital here?
Because, as the source clearly shows with the examples it picks, many phrasal verbs don't just have one meaning, they have multiple meanings. So you absolutely need the context, the sentence around it, the situation, to figure out which meaning is actually being used.
Okay, let's look at their first example then. They use look up. And the source apparently gives two main meanings for this one.
It does. The first one is probably the one most people think of first, to search for information.
Like if I don't know a word,
Exactly, you'd look it up. The source gives examples like, I had to look up the word in the dictionary. Simple enough.
Or searching online, presumably.
Yeah, another example is, can you look up the address for me online? You're searching for specific information in a reference source, like a dictionary or the internet.
Okay, that one feels pretty intuitive. The verb look and up towards the source, I can kind of see that. But the second meaning, that's where it gets less literal, I bet.
It does, yeah. The second common meaning for look up, according to the source, is quite different. It's when a situation or maybe someone's mood or health starts to improve or get better.
Improve. Wow, okay. That's a jump from searching for a word. How does the source show that?
It gives examples like, things are starting to look up after a tough year, meaning the situation is improving.
Right, getting better.
Or his health is looking up thanks to the new treatment. Again, an improvement, a positive change.
Okay, wow. So the same two words, look up, can mean finding info or things getting better. That really drives home the context point, doesn't it?
Absolutely. You can't know which one it is without the rest of the sentence.
Okay.
And that leads us perfectly into another one the source uses to show this multiple meaning thing, breakdown. This one, the source says, has 3 distinct meanings.
3. Okay. What's the first one? I think I can guess one. Probably the most annoying one.
You're probably thinking of when a machine stops working.
Yeah.
Right?
Like my car.
That's the first meaning the source lists, exactly. When something mechanical fails. The classic example is, my car broke down on the highway.
Yep. Heard that one? Said that one? Okay, so machine failure. What's meaning number 2? It must be different.
Very different again. The second meaning is about emotions. It means to become very upset, to lose emotional control, often to the point of crying.
Whoa. Okay, from a car engine failing to someone crying. That's a huge range. What's the example for that?
The source uses, she broke down in tears after hearing the news. It captures that moment of just losing it emotionally.
Got it. Okay, so mechanical failure, emotional collapse. What's the third meaning for breakdown from the source?
The third one is more analytical. It means to analyze something or explain it by dividing it into smaller, simpler parts.
Ah, okay. Like taking a complex idea and making it easier to understand.
Exactly that. Like saying, let me break down the problem for you. You're taking something complicated and explaining it step by step.
Okay, so a car stops working, someone gets really upset, or you explain something simply, all breakdown.
Yep. 3 very different scenarios, same phrasal verb, context, context, context.
It's funny, that third meaning, breakdown, as in analyze. That's kind of what we're doing right now with these phrasal verbs. We're breaking them down.
Ah, that's a great parallel, actually. Yeah, we are. Okay, let's look at another one the source highlights as being incredibly common and versatile. Pick up. This one pops up constantly in daily life.
Right. The first meaning that comes to my mind is like collecting something or someone.
That's exactly where the source starts, meaning, number 1, to collect someone or something. Examples given are, can you pick me up at the airport?
Okay.
Or, he picked up the package from the post office. Pretty straightforward collection.
Yeah, that makes sense. But I know there are other meanings too.
There are. The second meaning the source gives is about learning something or acquiring a skill, often quite naturally or informally, without structured lessons.
Oh, right. Like you just sort of absorb it, like learning a language by living somewhere.
Precisely. The source example is, she picked up Spanish while living in Mexico. You didn't formally study it, maybe, but you learned it. You can also pick up a habit or pick up an accent.
Interesting. Okay, collecting, learning informally. What's the third meaning for pickup in the source material?
Answering a phone call.
Of course. Like I didn't pick up the phone because I was busy. Or please pick up.
Exactly. So you've got physically lifting or collecting something, acquiring a skill or information casually, and answering the phone.
Pickup really does cover a lot of ground, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Shows how efficient these little phrases can be.
They really do pack a lot of meaning into just 2 or 3 words. The source also briefly mentions a couple of others just to give a broader picture.
Like which ones? Did it mention give in? I feel like that's common.
Yes, it did. Give in, meaning to stop resisting or finally agree to something after pressure. Like after hours of arguing, he finally gave in. You yield.
Right. Or maybe get along.
That one too, meaning to have a friendly relationship with someone. The source might use it like, do you get along well with your coworkers?
Yeah.
These extra examples just really reinforce how woven phrasal verbs are into the fabric of everyday English. They're not just, vocabulary lists. They're how people actually talk about actions and relationships and situations.
Okay, so we've established they're essential. They can be non-literal. They often have multiple meanings, which definitely sounds challenging. So what does the source advise about, tackling these challenges? How can you actually learn them effectively?
Right, the practical side. The source is very clear about the number 1 mistake, the biggest pitfall.
Which is?
Trying to translate them word for word from your own native language.
Yeah, because the combined meaning is idiomatic, right?
Exactly. Literal translation just doesn't work most of the time. Trying to figure out give up by translating give and then up separately. Like you said, it won't tell you it means quit. It can lead to real misunderstandings.
Okay, so avoid literal translation. What other challenges does the source mention?
Another big one is learning them in isolation. Just memorizing a list like look up, search isn't very effective.
Because you lose the context.
You lose the context entirely. And we've just seen how crucial context is for figuring out the correct meaning when there are multiple options.
So seeing them and using them in sentences and situations, that's the key.
Absolutely. The source really emphasizes learning and practicing in context. That's why looking at example sentences, like the ones provided, is so important. It also briefly touches on the grammar point of separable versus inseparable phrasal verbs.
Oh yeah, like pick me up versus look up the word.
Exactly. But the source frames it more as something to become aware of over time, a pattern to notice, rather than a complex grammar rule you need to dissect right at the beginning, which is probably less intimidating for learners.
Yeah, good point. Okay, so focus on context, don't translate literally. What practical, like hands-on methods does the source suggest for actually getting these into your active vocabulary?
It offers a few good strategies. One is using flashcards, and this is the important bit, putting the whole phrase in an example sentence on the card.
Right, not just break down, fail. But my car might break down if I don't fix it.
Precisely. Context again. Another powerful method is active use. Writing your own sentences, maybe even short paragraphs or stories, deliberately using the phrasal verbs you're learning.
I like that. It makes you really think about the meaning and how to use it correctly.
It really does. And then there's a more passive method you can turn active. Noticing them in the wild.
How so?
The source suggests really paying attention when you're watching TV, listening to podcasts like this one, or reading. When you hear or see a phrasal verb, especially one you're trying to learn, pause for a second, think about the context. Does the meaning make sense? Maybe even write it down.
So turning your regular English exposure into a mini lesson. Smart.
Yeah, it leverages what you're already doing. The source mentions other things too, like quizzing yourself, finding a language partner to practice speaking with, maybe recording yourself using them. Lots of ideas.
Okay.
But the single most crucial piece of advice, the underlying principle the source stresses for truly mastering phrasal verbs, for making them feel natural.
Let me guess. It's not glamorous, is it? Is it? Consistency.
You picked it up. See, phrasal verb in action, yes, consistency. Regular focused practice and exposure over time. Little and often is much better than trying to cram loads in at once.
Right. It's like building any skill, really. You need regular workouts.
Exactly. The sheer number of phrasal verbs out there can feel overwhelming at first, but the source gives good advice. Start with the high frequency ones, like the ones we've discussed, look up, break down, pick up, get comfortable with those, and then gradually build outwards. Consistently.
Okay, great. So let's just quickly summarize what we've pulled from the source in this deep dive. Phrasal verbs. They're these combinations of a verb plus a particle, like a preposition or adverb. And crucially, they often create completely new meanings that aren't literal.
Right. And they are absolutely fundamental for understanding native speakers and for sounding natural yourself, especially in informal, everyday English.
Yeah. And while they can be tricky, mainly because many have multiple meanings and you can't just guess, the key is focusing on context.
Definitely. Avoid translating word for word from your first language and practice them in context, not as isolated words.
We looked closely at examples like look up, which can mean searching for info or a situation improving.
And break down, meaning a machine failing, getting emotional, or explaining something simply.
And pick up for collecting, learning informally, or answering the phone. These really show that versatility and how much context matters.
Learning them does take effort, no doubt about it, but the source is really encouraging that the payoff, the improvement in your fluency and comprehension is huge. It's worth it.
Absolutely worth it.
Okay.
Okay, so what does this all mean for you listening right now? This source isn't just giving information, it's really a call to action, isn't it? It's encouraging you to start using these.
Yeah, it leads perfectly into a little challenge for you today, something directly inspired by those practice methods the source suggests.
Okay, here's a thought, something to take away and try. See if you can use just one of the phrasal verbs we discussed today, look up, break down, or pick up in a real sentence sometime today.
Yeah, think about your day. Maybe you do need to look up some information online.
Or maybe you'll pick up coffee on your way home.
Or perhaps you need to break down a task into smaller steps for someone at work or for yourself.
Just find one opportunity. Focus on using it correctly, naturally, in its context.
That active use, actually producing the language, that's what really helps cement your understanding. It moves it from passive knowledge to active skill.
Give it a shot. Start noticing them more. Start trying to use them. They really are a key part of sounding natural in English. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive today.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
We really hope it's given you some clear insights and maybe some motivation to tackle phrasal verbs. If you did enjoy this, please make sure you are subscribed so you don't miss our future explorations.
See you next time. Welcome back to the deep dive. We're jumping into another topic today, using the source material you've given us and really pulling out the key bits of information.
Yeah, the idea is always to give you that direct path to understanding.
And today we're looking at something the source material highlights as pretty fundamental if you want to sound, natural when speaking English. We're talking about idioms.
Exactly. The source we're diving into is basically a guide to getting the hang of these tricky expressions.
Right. So think of this deep dive as like your quick guide to understanding those phrases, where if you just looked up the words one by one, they'd make zero sense.
Absolutely zero.
And the source really stresses this. Understanding idioms isn't just like adding more words. It's actually key to sounding more natural, more fluent, and connecting with the culture behind the language.
It really is. The source defines them pretty clearly right at the start. Idioms are these fixed expressions,
Yeah.
The meaning just isn't obvious from the individual words themselves.
The whole phrase has its own special meaning.
Exactly. It's figurative.
Okay, let's use the main example the source kicks off with, because it's like the perfect way to see this. Break the ice.
Right.
Now, literally, you picture someone, hitting a block of ice.
Yeah, with a hammer or something, which obviously isn't what we mean when we use it.
Not at all. So what does it mean according to the source?
Well, the source explains it clearly. Break the ice means to start a conversation or maybe an activity in a social situation.
Yeah.
Especially when people are maybe a bit quiet or, feeling awkward at first.
Ah, okay. So it's about easing that tension, getting things going.
Precisely. It's got nothing to do with actual ice.
So the meaning is totally separate from the words, which brings up the question the source tackles. Why even bother using them if they're so confusing?
That's a fair question.
Yeah.
And the source gives a strong answer. Using idioms makes you sound natural. Like really natural.
Because native speakers use them.
All the time. Constantly, often without even realizing it, They add color and, personality to your speech.
Yeah.
Makes it less,
Less like a textbook. Or a robot translating.
Exactly. Less like a word-for-word translation. It shows you're comfortable, you're plugged into the culture.
Like a kind of linguistic shortcut.
Yeah.
The source even hints at how many different kinds there are, mentioning different categories.
Yeah, it gives a little taste of the variety. Lists things like animal idioms, food idioms, color idioms, body idioms.
Okay, can you give us just a quick example for each, just one from the source's list so we get a feel for it?
Sure. Okay, so for animal idioms, the source mentions, let the cat out of the bag.
Got it.
For food idioms, spill the beans. A color idiom example is green with envy.
Right.
And for body idioms, cost an arm and a leg.
And again, none of those make literal sense. You're not actually handling cats or beans or turning green or losing limbs.
Well, hopefully not losing limbs, even if something is really expensive.
Yeah.
But yeah, idiomatically, it's all figurative meaning.
Right. Okay, so the source then really digs into some specific common idioms. Let's spend some time on those examples it highlights. Starting with the one we already mentioned, break the ice.
Okay. So we said the basic meaning is starting a conversation or activity to ease social tension, right?
Yeah.
Making people feel more comfortable.
Getting past that initial quietness or awkwardness.
Exactly.
And the source has some really good sort of everyday examples, like telling a joke at the start of a meeting.
Yeah, that's a classic one. It lightens the mood, gets people relaxed and maybe talking a bit.
Or what about those, icebreaker games? First day of school, workshops.
Oh, yeah. The whole point of those is literally to get people interacting, break down those first walls. That's breaking the ice.
The source also talks about how just a friendly, warm welcome can do it if you arrive somewhere new, feeling a bit nervous maybe.
Absolutely. That simple gesture can just dissolve that initial feeling of distance or coldness. Makes you feel included.
And even just, walking up to someone you don't know and introducing yourself, that's actively breaking the ice.
You're taking the first step to connect. So yeah, it's all about initiating something to reduce that social friction.
Okay, initiating connection, easing tension. Makes sense. So the next idiom the source digs into is let the cat out of the bag.
Right. This one's about revealing a secret.
Okay.
It might be by accident, or maybe someone does it on purpose. But the key thing is, information that was supposed to be hidden is now out in the open.
The source uses the surprise party example, right?
Yeah.
That's perfect. If someone blurts it out beforehand.
Yep, they've let the cat out of the bag. Surprise ruined.
Or the source gives the example of a warning, like, hey, whatever happens, don't let the cat out of the bag about this new project yet.
Yeah, stressing the need for secrecy. Keep it under wraps.
And it mentions how often it just slips out, accidentally. Oh no, I wasn't supposed to say that. I totally let the cat out of the bag.
That's super common, that accidental reveal. And the source also notes sometimes the secret just gets out. Maybe you don't know exactly how, but despite efforts to keep it quiet.
The cat's out of the bag anyway.
Exactly. The secret's known.
No. Revealing secrets. Got it. Now, the third one the source highlights is spill the beans.
And this is interesting because, as the source points out, the meaning is really, really similar to let the cat out of the bag. It also means revealing secret information.
It's funny how languages have these parallel phrases, isn't it? Spill the beans, let the cat out of the bag. They feel almost the same. Does the source explain any difference?
It mostly shows how interchangeable they often are. The examples really demonstrate this. Like you could ask, okay, who spilled the beans about the trip?
Which is basically the same as asking who let the cat out of the bag about it.
Pretty much. Or the warning, don't spill the beans until after the announcement. Same idea, keep it secret.
Wait for the official word. The source also has an example about an interview. Someone might accidentally reveal something confidential.
Yeah, they might spill the beans under pressure or just by mistake. Or maybe someone promised to keep a secret. I swore I wouldn't spill the beans, but...
They couldn't resist.
Exactly. So the source basically presents them as very close synonyms for reveal a secret. Which one you use might just depend on the context or, what sounds better to you in that moment.
Good to know. They're so similar. Okay, fourth idiom the source focuses on, cost an arm and a leg.
This one's pretty vivid, I think. It just means something is really, really expensive.
Like painfully expensive.
Extremely costly, yeah.
And the examples in the source are things we can all relate to. Buying a new phone these days.
Oh yeah, this new phone cost me an arm and a leg. You hear that a lot.
Or bigger things like college tuition. The source uses that example, and it definitely fits for many people. Paying for university can absolutely cost an arm and a leg.
It certainly can. And unexpected things too, like getting your car fixed or repairs on the house. The source mentions repairs costing an arm and a leg.
They always seem to, don't they? And it works the other way, too, when you're saying what you don't want. The source has someone saying, I need a new car, but one that doesn't cost an arm and a leg.
Right, meaning you want something affordable. It really emphasizes the high price by using such a dramatic image.
Definitely gets the message across. Okay, fifth and final idiom the source really unpacks is green with envy.
This one is all about jealousy. Intense jealousy. If someone is green with envy, they're feeling super envious of what someone else has, or their situation, or their success.
The source paints clear pictures, like you see your friend's amazing new house.
And you might feel green with envy, yeah.
Or you hear about someone's incredible vacation while you're, stuck working. That feeling.
That's being green with envy. That strong sense of longing and jealousy.
The source also mentions using it as advice, right? Like telling someone, hey, don't be green with envy, focus on your own good stuff.
Exactly. Trying to discourage that feeling. And finally, the source notes that just seeing someone else succeed their achievements, their luck can unfortunately trigger that feeling. Being green with envy.
It's specifically tied to that strong negative emotion of jealousy.
Right.
Okay, so we've covered what idioms are, fundamentally, those fixed, non-literal phrases. We've looked at why the source says they're so important for sounding natural and connecting culturally. And we've really dug into 5 key examples from the source. Break the ice, let the cat out of the bag, spill the beans, cost an arm and a leg, green with envy, seeing how they work in different contexts.
Straight from the source material, yeah.
But just knowing the meanings isn't quite enough, is it? The source then kind of shifts gears, focusing on how to actually use them properly.
Which is crucial. Knowing is one thing, using effectively is another. And the source gives some really practical tips here. One big one it emphasizes is that idioms are mostly for casual conversation.
Yeah, this feels really important for anyone learning. You probably shouldn't scatter idioms all through a formal essay or a serious business report, right?
Generally, no. It could sound out of place, maybe even unprofessional or just confusing. The source specifically warns against using them in formal writing unless you really, really know your audience and the context allows for it.
Better safe than sorry in formal situations.
Definitely. And the source also points out how idioms often carry cultural values or humor or shared history. Using them well shows more than just language skill. It shows you kind of get the culture too.
And another key piece of advice from the source, which I think is easy to forget when you're excited about using new phrases, is don't overdo it.
Oh, absolutely. Balance is key. Trying to cram an idiom into every other sentence, it backfires. It actually makes you sound less natural, maybe even a bit awkward or hard to follow.
Which leads right into the common mistakes the source warns about.
Yes, the pitfalls to avoid. The source is very clear here. First big mistake, using an idiom literally.
Right. Like we said with spill the beans, if you think someone's actually dropping vegetables.
You've missed the point entirely. Understanding that it's figurative is step one.
And the source has that funny but useful example of mixing idioms up. It mentions saying something like breaking the beans.
Yeah, which is nonsense, right? It mashes up break the ice and spill the beans. It shows you that idioms are fixed. You can't just swap words around. Breaking the beans isn't a thing, it's just noise.
It sounds wrong because our brains expect that fixed phrase. And overusing them, like we just said, is another common error.
It muddies the water, makes things less clear, not more. If you fire off too many idioms, especially ones your listener might not know, you're actually making communication harder.
And that links to the last mistake. Using them in the wrong context or with the wrong audience. If the person you're talking to has no idea what cost an arm and a leg means,
then you haven't communicated effectively, you've just confused them. You need to sort of read the room, gauge your audience.
So it takes sensitivity, really, understanding the situation and who you're talking to.
For sure. Mastering idioms isn't just memorizing definitions. It's about understanding context, culture, and using them smoothly, naturally.
And the source finishes up with some really practical ideas for actually applying all this, which is great for, anyone actively trying to learn.
Yeah, it gives you actionable steps. Like the source suggests practicing by writing your own sentences using the idioms correctly.
Or even getting a bit more creative, maybe writing a short story or a little dialogue using the idioms you've learned. Helps you see them in action.
Listening is also huge. The source recommends really listening out for idioms when you watch movies or TV shows or listen to podcasts.
Like this one.
Exactly. And trying to figure out the meaning from the context.
And the source also mentions explaining them. Maybe trying to explain an idiom to someone else, or even just writing down the explanation for yourself.
Yeah, if you can explain it clearly, you probably understand it pretty well. The source even lays out a kind of 7-day challenge idea.
Oh yeah. What does that involve?
It suggests daily tasks like learning a few new ones, writing with them, listening for them, maybe even recording yourself using them, trying them in conversation if you can, creating dialogues, and then reviewing. The main point is consistent active practice.
It really drives home that you need to practice and apply this stuff after you learn the basics.
Definitely.
So, wrapping up this deep dive then, we've looked right into what English idioms are, those non-literal fixed phrases that add so much flavor. We explored why the source says they're important for sounding natural, connecting culturally.
And we unpacked those key examples from the source. Break the ice, let the cat out of the bag, spill the beans, cost an arm and a leg, green with envy. We looked at their meanings and how the source shows them being used.
We also covered that crucial practical advice from the source: use them mostly casually, don't overuse them, watch out for common mistakes like taking them literally or mixing them up.
And the big takeaway from the source, really, is that idioms aren't just obstacles. They're actually tools that make English more colorful, more alive, more fluent. They genuinely enrich your communication.
They really do, and it kind of leaves you thinking, doesn't it? How did these specific weird phrases like spill the beans or cost an arm and a leg become the standard way to say those things? What's the story behind them? What does it tell us about, the history or the shared jokes or experiences baked into the language?
That's a whole other deep dive, probably. It often points to fascinating origins, some forgotten, some still debated. It shows how language reflects culture and changes over time.
Absolutely. Something to ponder as you start noticing these idioms popping up all over the place now. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.